Proverbs 19, verse 3. The foolishness of a man twists his way, and his heart frets against the Lord. All right, let's talk about both of these lines. The foolish man twists his way. This is, well, obviously he's not on a straight path. He is actively doing this. He is actively twisting his way. That there is not just this little bit of a twist and he's done. The fool continues to twist and twist and twist his ways. And we can see that unless someone comes back. Now you can obviously go to God, and you can obviously repent of these things and stop. But someone on this particular path will continue to twist their ways. And we can see that with examples such as Cain. Cain is not confronted by God at the beginning because he has murdered his brother. He is confronted by God at the beginning. If you do well, will you not be accepted? That had nothing to do with murder because he hadn't murdered his brother yet. That had everything to do with the fact that he was worshiping God in a vain way. Was he trying? Was it his intent to worship God? Yes. Was he doing it properly? No, he was not, because God was not accepting it. But we see he twists his way to where he goes further, and he does kill his brother Abel. We can see the same thing concerning Judas being a thief, and then digressing, twisting his way, we could say, following this illustration, to betraying the Christ for money. We can also see it concerning Saul. Saul starts off a pretty good king, but then becomes this, and he can say he played the fool. He can say it, and he knew he did, but he would continue to play it. And we have others, such as Ahab, and we can see also large groups of people, entire cultures or nations, or the Gentile world at large. In Romans chapter 1, beginning in verse 18, going to verse 32, it shows a digression that was there, this twisting of a path. Now, the foolishness of a man twists his way, and his heart frets against the Lord. And that word fret means to be vexed. It means to be enraged. It means to hate that person. If you're fretting against someone or something, you hate that someone or something. And so his heart frets against the Lord. In fact, there are many who claiming to be atheists at a certain part in their life were blaming God for the things that occurred in their life. And for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them, the things they were blaming God for was a result of their bad behavior. It was their own undoing. They're the ones that did it. They're the ones that brought these problems, and then they are enraged against God. They fret against the Lord. They have wrecked their lives, and instead of turning to God, they hate Him. Now, we do have we will call it a modern day example. We don't have to go to the Old Testament or New Testament for this. But it is a known fact that Madalyn Murray O'Hair, she was a well-known atheist and really an ungodly woman. That's what she wanted to be. She did not want God in her life. She did not want to be seen as godly in any way. She was not a good person, but there is a part in her life where it is storming outside. Her life truly is a wreck. There are these multiple problems that are occurring simultaneous, and it's because of her. She did it. She did it to herself, and she goes out into this thunderstorm and screams at God. All right, and what was the point of it? This is fretting against him is what it is. Just screaming. And I guess once she got soaked and cold and had screamed enough, she came back inside. But that is a part of her biography. Now we go to verse 4, and here we have something where we'll also see in verse 6 and verse 7. But wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his friend. Now, we just need to understand some things. Solomon is not telling us that we should do everything we need to do to be wealthy and whatever we need to do to stay away from poverty. Matter of fact, later in this book, Proverbs 30 and verse 8, he says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me." And you could see that as a prayer. Okay, but let's look at our verse 4. Wealth makes friends. All right, would we call these sincere friends? No. I can't help it. There is a really funny line in a Marx Brothers movie. Groucho is trying his best to get into not just the good graces, but to actually marry this wealthy heiress. And he discovers that she has $16 million. And he says, now, that extra, I thought you owned, I'm not a gold digger because I thought you only had 15 million. That extra million doesn't do anything to me. But here is this, the wealthy having many friends, but this may not be for sincerity. It may be only for gain. And that would be something you'd have to. That's a problem I don't have. Okay, I don't have people coming out of the woodwork trying to be friends with me because I have a lot of money. I don't have that problem. But wealth makes many friends, and we can go back to chapter 18 and look in verse 24. The poor man uses entreaties, but the rich man answers roughly. 24. A man who has friends must himself be friendly, but there is a friend who sticks like a brother. That's a real friend. Here we have a comparison. And we come down to verse 17. This would be 19 and 7. All the brothers of the poor hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He may pursue them with words, yet they abandon him. And that's coming down to verse 7. And the poor is separated from his friends. Well, those who seek the rich know they can gain nothing out of the poor. They know they can gain nothing. Now, I said I don't have that problem of somebody thinking that I'm just overwhelmingly rich, and they come for the sake of finding some kind of gain. But everybody has witnessed that either personally, this person is trying to sell you something, or this person is trying to they're up to no good. They're up to something. And also, it has occurred to me of where I'm just trying to be friendly, and I'm just trying to show no partiality. Of where showing no partiality means showing the same respect to the poor and to the rich. From the book of James, we see that. And of course, there's many ways to show partiality, but showing the same respect to the poor and to the rich. But when approaching, and this would just be, on occasion, this has happened to me, I got the sense that the rich man was suspicious that I wanted more than just to be momentarily, greet and meet, and that was about it. All right, just say hello. That there was a suspicion of he's trying for something. He wants something else. There's ulterior motives. Well, there wasn't. But and I can understand someone who is in that position having a deal with that all the time, that they just have this cynical outlook on everybody. And that sincerity may be something they don't see a lot of. And but we read verse 4 again, 19 and verse 4. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his friends. Now let's skip verse 5 for a second, go to verse 6. Many entreat the favor of the nobility, and every man is a friend to one who gives gifts. Now, this is, once again, looking for favor, looking to gain something, and there are words for this, and none of the words are good words. None of the words are good. You have sycophant, which is someone who is a flatterer, which is another bad word. Someone who is just a hanger-on for what they can gain. They will flatter, they will amuse, they will pretend to worship such a person. There's the leech, the lapdog, the lickspittle, the self-seeker. None of those are good words. None of them are. And what Solomon is saying is this is what you're going to find. This is what's going to be out there. Not that you should seek wealth for the sake of many friends. That's not a good thing to do. You be friendly and try to seek friends. But nor to be one who's just going to be this self-seeker who's out there. And now we look at verse 7 again. All the brothers of the poor hate him. How much do his friends go far from him? He may pursue them with words, yet they abandon him. All right, and we refer back to Solomon in Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 8. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Poverty of where I feel like I have to steal. Riches, I forget about you. Just give me this day my daily bread, is basically what he's saying. He's saying just what's sufficient for me, the food allotted to me, and that's it. Proverbs 14:31, he who honors him, that is God, he who honors God, and I'm doing the last section of that proverb, he who honors God has mercy on the needy. All right, that's not avoiding them. That's not ignoring them, neglecting them. I can gain nothing out of that person, therefore I'm not going to have anything. I mean, they're just background noise. It is honoring God means having mercy on the needy. And also honoring God, while this is not in a proverb, but it's definitely in the book of James, honoring God is also showing no partiality. That treating everyone with the same respect that a human being deserves. And everyone deserves an amount of respect. Now, we go back to verse 5 because we skipped it. In verse 5, we see is also going to be connected to verse 8. But this is a theme that we've seen already. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies will not escape. Now we read verse 8. Verse 9. A false witness will not go unpunished. Yes, these two have identical beginnings, and we've mentioned it before. There are proverbs that have identical beginnings. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies shall perish. Now, I just want us to look at the construction of these, because both of them have the same beginning of what will not happen. All right, what will not happen? They will not go unpunished, which means they'll be punished. To be unpunished? No, that's not going to happen. To be punished? Yes. So both of them have this, we could call it a negative, of what will not happen. And verse 5 does another thing of what will not happen. He who speaks lies will not escape. We could go to verse 9 and see this is now in a positive. This is what's going to happen. And he who speaks lies shall perish. And see how these are working together. One is doing what will not happen. The other is doing this is what will happen. In case you were wondering, in case it hadn't been hammered in yet, let me help. Okay? And here is this idea that you're not going to escape, the one who speaks lies, not going to escape, but will in fact perish. Now, let's go to verse 8, because we have skipped verse 8. And verse 8 is linked up to verse 2, which we ended last week in that one. We'll read verse 2. And it is also good for a soul, also it is not good for a soul to be without knowledge, and he sins who hastens with his feet. All right, having trouble reading today. Going now to verse 8. He who gets wisdom loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will find good. It's the opposite of verse 2. And quite often we see that. It's the opposite. Giving a teaching from another direction. All right? And we can go to chapter 8 and verse 36. But he who sins against me wrongs his own soul. All those who hate me love death. And so that's wisdom speaking there. He who gets wisdom loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will find good. And as we will see, maybe not today, I doubt we'll get there today. You can have this understanding. You can have this appreciation for the knowledge. You can be following wisdom and listening to wisdom today and listen to that wisdom to an extent of years. But you can still, at some point, it's possible, begin to ignore it and let it slide. And we will get to that point of where that is being addressed, that you can hear it, live it for a while, and then slide away from it. And wisdom now is not part of you anymore. It slowly is being lost. And foolishness takes its place. There's nothing else that could take its place other than foolishness. If it's not wisdom, if it's not one, it's the other. Now, we go to verse 10. This is another of the much less. We have these proverbs of much less. 17:7 was one of them. All right, here's the other. Verse 10, so it's 19:10. Luxury is not fitting for a fool, much less for a servant to rule over princes. Okay, and I think the emphasis is going to be the much less, that particular part of the couplet, the much less of a servant to rule over princes. It's not fitting for a fool to be in luxury, and even less so for a servant to rule over princes. Well, what does that mean? I'll tell you the implication of it. I'll tell you what it's teaching. It is teaching that there are individuals who they have the makeup. They have been given the talents to, in fact, rule and rule well. Okay? And I'm not talking on a low level. I'm talking on a much larger scale. That they have the talents to do that. And that someone who is a servant doesn't necessarily have that talent at all. That servant is doing what that servant can do. And we can look at it this way, all right? Such as Daniel. Daniel had gifts given to him by God, and it was more than the interpretation of dreams and visions. It was more than that he had the ability to rule, and of course anybody can do things honestly, but he had integrity, but he knew how to rule. Though he was not the king, he does become a governor. And to have a servant who rules over princes would be that idea of someone who just doesn't have the competence to begin with, may be doing it out of vengeance, may be doing it out of just for the sake of gain and dishonesty, and doing it for themselves. This is something that just it's not fitting. That should not be. And this idea of princes is someone who rightfully should be ruling. And of course, we're dealing in the Old Testament where you have Solomon. Solomon is going to pass away, and then it's going to be Rehoboam. Now, Rehoboam is not going to have the wisdom that Solomon had. And matter of fact, Solomon, as an example of not listening to wisdom anymore, Solomon began to not listen to wisdom anymore. And we discussed that at the beginning of this class, that even Solomon could disregard the Word of God and disregard wisdom, as wise as he was. Now, we go to verse 11. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. We've said this before. Anybody can get angry. Anybody can lose their temper. Anybody can. Babies can. Children can. Madmen can. Anybody can lose their temper and go into a rage. But someone who can remain calm, who can show discretion, who can be slow to anger, that's not to say they're never angry ever. That's not saying that. But someone who is in fact slow to anger, and that would describe God. God does get angry. And He destroyed this world with a flood. He destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. He destroyed all kinds of nations in the past, this side of the flood and this side of Sodom and Gomorrah, such as the Assyrian Empire. Nineveh is no more, and numerous others that came to an end. He gets angry, but there is this slow to getting there. We have the thing of someone who has a quick fuse. All right, you don't want to really be around that person very much if you can help it. Someone who has a quick fuse, you don't know what's going to set them off. And suddenly they are enraged at something, and it could be you. And I have met them before and come to realize I need to be around this person at a minimal amount of time. Not just small bits of time if I have to, but otherwise just keep a distance, because they always seem quick to get angry at the drop of a hat. And that's no good. And we have more of that being stated later, just a few more verses down. Verse 19, a man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if you rescue him, you will have to do it again. Here is someone who that is their track record, that's their habit, that's currently their behavior, that they have this great amount of wrath and they're going to be punished for it. And it's not enough to say, I beat this guy to a pulp because he insulted me. That's not enough. That's no justification whatsoever. Or that he owed me money, or he did these minor little things. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment. And here is this bit of warning for the one who might try to rescue this person, try to keep them from their worst side, is if you rescue him, you will have to do it again. This is going to be a full-time job. You're going to have to be there always. You probably have known of where there's been a couple, and it was the wife that could turn the temperature down quick, that her husband would begin to explode, and she would be there to let's modulate that. Let's turn that down. And she could do it. I've seen it. I don't know about all in this situation, but I've seen it of where, just a little move, just a little touch, just a little word, and it brings it down. And you realize she's got to do this a lot. She knows what she needs to do before it gets out of hand. And you'll have to do it again. You will have to do it again. And now we come back up to verse 11, and we want to look at the discretion of a man makes him slow to anger. There is that idea of discretion, of thinking before you take the step, being cautious, hearing a matter out, understanding that your actions must be correct before you make any kind of commitment to it. The showing, and that's not to say that there isn't anything that requires anger, because there are some things that are going to be angering. But it is the glory, it is His glory to overlook a transgression. And sometimes it's just good to say, yeah, that's okay. I will accept being harmed, and I accept your apology. It was a transgression, yes, and we just overlook it. It's all right. That takes that person who has control over themselves is greater, who can conquer himself is greater than one who conquers a city. Because the one who conquers a city doesn't have to have self-control. But here's this person who has self-control. Well, they have truly controlled something. Now we go to verse 12. The king's wrath is like a roaring lion, but his favor is like the dew on the grass. All right, Proverbs 20 and verse 2 has the same beginning. This is another one of those where they have the same words. The king's wrath is like a roaring lion. Yeah, that's because a king can do something. He has the authority to mete out justice. He has the authority of life and death. He has that authority. He has authority to throw a person into prison and keep them for a while. And we see that with the authority that Pharaoh had over Joseph, though Joseph had been framed and by Potiphar's wife. But he ends up in prison. And how long would he have remained there if Pharaoh didn't want him back out? And Pharaoh had some things he wanted to talk about and to see if Daniel could do what it had been stated. by that butler that he could do. But the king's wrath is like a roaring lion. Now here's the other side to it. But his favor is like dew on the grass. So 16 and verse 15, his favor is like a cloud of the latter rain. There's goodness to it. There's benefit to it. That his favor, his kindness is there can be, because he's got authority. There can be a great benefit that is in there. Now verse 13 and 14 really are going to be connected together. A foolish son is the ruin of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dripping. So it's talking about two different people. A foolish son, which we have heard about him before. Foolish son brings about shame. A foolish son is a grief to his father. That's 17 and verse 25. A foolish man despises his mother. That's 15 and 20. So this foolish son is going to be a ruin to his parents. Now we come to this next person, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dripping. All right, so we can see from 18 and verse 6, a fool's lips enter into contention. And this is a completely different kind of wife than is found in 18 and verse 22 and 19 and verse 14, which is our next verse. Houses and riches are an inheritance from fathers. Okay, that's one part of this. But a prudent wife is from the Lord. All right, so contentions of a wife and a prudent wife, that's two different types of people. That's two different types of wives that are there. You have someone who's contentious, and you have someone who is prudent. And someone who's contentious is that a fool's lips enter into contentions, trying to make arguments, trying to set everyone ill at ease, trying to humiliate, or trying to manipulate. And here is this continual dripping of just not stopping at all. And I had a teacher years ago. We were going through Proverbs, and he said, because quite often we will see this about it's better to live on the roof, at a corner of a roof, than to be in a house with a contentious woman. All right, he said that Solomon is writing down Proverbs, and then one of his wives passes by, and oh yeah, okay, he starts talking about a contentious wife, and that he had 700, and I don't think they would have gotten along very well. And I just can't imagine. That there was a whole lot of love and attachment that was in there. I think that most of his wives, if not, all but one, maybe his first wife was different, but most of his wives were nothing more than political expediency. That marrying a princess from some country, and now there's this bond. Now we're friends, and it's diplomacy by marriage, and that's no good. That is absolutely no good. Okay, so verse 14 again. Houses and riches are an inheritance from the fathers. From fathers. All right, so this particular proverb gives the source of these benefits, gives the bestower of it. So houses and riches, that's from the father. That's from a father, an inheritance from a father. A prudent wife, however, is from the Lord. And we just have to ask again, does this demand providence? Of course it does. It's not just implying it, it's demanding that there must be providence. That a prudent wife is from the Lord? Well, one, she's learned from the Lord, that is true. But I think that we can look in this, and 18 and verse 22 obtains favor from the Lord. And this all speaks of providence, and we just say once again, I think I mentioned it last week, and it is in disagreement of someone I highly respect. But he believes one thing, I believe another thing, and it's okay. In all this, it's okay. It's just he's going to have to convince me, because I'm being convinced by Proverbs, is that two people can in fact be meant for each other. They can be. How else would you read this? How else could it be read? I think that there's providence that is given in many ways. And of course, in looking years and centuries and working behind the scenes in all these things, of where can it come down to it that this baby boy is intended to marry this baby girl in time? I think it's very possible. Matter of fact, it's more than possible. I see that there is providence in this. And as we made mention last week, that doesn't mean that we as humans can't mess that up, because we can. We can poison that relationship. We can destroy it. We can just decide that we're not going to have a godly house. Just decide that we're going to toss everything out and destroy our own home. Now, we come down to verse 15. All right, we're back to the sluggard. We're back to laziness. Verse 15. Laziness casts one into deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. Okay, so this is just cause and effect, is what this is. This is precisely what you get. And here is this idea, laziness casts one into a deep sleep. Well, that is lulled and eased gently into this want and need, into this want and hunger. Just gently eased into it, and just going into this deep sleep, and somehow convincing yourself that you don't have to do anything, that you can just be lazy and everything's going to be piled out for you. Well, maybe, but it's not good. That an idle person is going to suffer hunger, is going to suffer need. It's going to be there. Proverbs 18 and verse 9, it speaks of this sluggard, this lazy person, as being a brother of him who is a destroyer. And we spoke of that back a couple of weeks ago, perhaps more than that, of someone who didn't get the job done, and someone who came and destroyed the job that was done. They're both brothers in this. It does the job that was supposed to be there isn't there. This one didn't do it. This one destroyed it. It's the same result. It's the same non-existent work that was there. And both have in fact destroyed it, one by never doing it, and the other by way of sabotage, or by way of destruction. Now verse 16. He who keeps the commandment keeps his soul, but he who is careless of his ways will die. All right, these are very straightforward words. Keep your soul, you keep the commandments. Careless of your ways, well, obviously you're not going to keep your soul. And you will die in this. Proverbs 4:4, keep my commandments and live. Proverbs 14:12, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. All right, there's someone who's careless in his ways can find that way of death. And Proverbs is presenting something extremely serious to help us live right, for us to keep our soul. And it requires something out of us, and that is keeping the commandments, having a love for wisdom. And in case someone out there thinks that that word wisdom is this hazy thing in philosophy, it's not. It's not. It means following the will of God is what it means. And that in following true moral thought, of which God's laws fully embrace. They're hand in hand. You can't have the law of God if there is no moral law, and you cannot have a moral law if there is no law of God. They are the same. And with this, keeping His commandments is in fact showing wisdom. And we define wisdom again as you know to do better, you just won't do better. You just won't do it. You know it, you're just not. And sometimes you know something just because it's actually been hardwired in you. Now you can destroy that. You can know that it's wrong to do certain things, but you can be taught different. You can be motivated different. You can destroy that out of you. But wisdom is a simple subject. It's a very simple subject. And God brings it to us in very bite-sized pieces by proverb after proverb after proverb. Now, verse 17. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord. Now that comes back up to verse 9. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his friends. All right, he who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord. So the Lord is appreciative of that, and He will pay back what He has given. All right, we can go to 14 and verse 31. He who oppresses the poor reproaches his Maker. And here is the lending to the Lord. He's going to pay it back. And this is a promise. And understand, God can reward you in ways it may not be monetarily. It may be something far greater than that. Money is extremely limited and can only do so much, and it can't do any more. It's very limited in what it's capable of accomplishing, and also it's limited in that it's very temporary in time. He can provide for us. He can repay us in multiple ways that money could never have purchased. Could never have purchased whatsoever. By way of friendships, by way of blessings beyond imagination, by way of greater integrity that we have helped to, that we're working toward. There's so much about it, and everything from like a personal satisfaction, personal peace, and so many other ways. God will pay back what was given. He's saying He's going to do it. And we must have pity on the poor. Now, we have come to the end of our class. And thank everybody for being with us. We'll continue next week. Thank you.